That's right. But his project was to create a day in which the Quran will be burnt because he thinks Islam is an evil religion. So there are, that's the third component of American society I was talking about.
Is this a referendum?
And those need to be pushed back.
Is this a referendum on that site, on that mosque, or on Islam? People start discussing Islam treatment of women, Islam treatment of democracy. Well, are we talking about, we can make sure that the church, that the Catholic churches, whatever, they are kosher, before we build church, it's becoming a referendum on Islam itself.
I think all religions, Islam and Christianity and Judaism and Buddhism and Hinduism and others, all religions have got both their glorious divine dimension and dimensions that are quite outrageous and violate some very basic human dignities. Issue of sexuality, for example, in the Catholic Church, and child pornography and all of this in some of these places is quite obvious. But I think all religions ought to be, therefore, at any given time, any civilized society, ought to at once embrace the deep divine principles of all religions. But at the same time, keep an eye on religion so that it doesn't become too extreme and then become like the serpent that is chasing its own or biting its own tail.
Sure.
You see. And Islam, in that sense, is not different. It is like all religions and therefore ought to be both embraced in terms of its goodness, but at the same time kept a critical eye on its dimensions.
It seems we always compare our best with other worst. We don't compare, the glorious time of each, and we say no monopoly on the stupidity.
Well, I think one of the great tragedies of the Western world that we are part of. I have grown up here in the United States. I have lived most of my life here in the United States. This is a country that I treasure a great deal, and I will defend its basic principles wherever I am. But I think the tragedy of the Western world, broadly and culturally speaking, not in small academic and informed circles, is the tremendous ignorance about the Islamic civilization and its achievements. I go around the world giving lectures on this, and I'm stunned, even in universities, how very little most people know about this.
How about Europe?
And if you don't know, therefore, the weight of this civilization, you become easily susceptible to lies and
demean it, whatever.
And also.
How about Europe? You've been in Europe. You just came back. Do you see the same audience, same reaction? Are the people there a little bit? They're closer to Islam. They are directly.
Yes, there is a large, certainly European now something in the range of over 20 million European Muslims from all over the world.
Even
some of them second, third, fourth, some generations. But there are also new immigrants. And there are very sharp and, in fact, quite flammable debates going on in many European countries, in Holland and in Denmark and in places like Britain and other places, France, in which it seems to me the Muslims seem to be under a particular kind of a spotlight. And some of that is unfair. But some of that is a challenge to the Muslims. To deepen their own tolerance of the other, the non-Muslims, and people who have got different cultural background and historical background, and therefore come to the forefront to participate in the democratic reconstruction of the world in which they live. So it is both fair critique and also unfair critique that is heavy on stereotypes and a certain kind of a militancy.
But they cannot be monopolized the way the American people cannot monopolize in a very short period of time. One time, 80% of the American people want to liberate Kuwait or Iraq, and this is the Muslim people, so they can have freedom of religion. But the most moderate Muslim who lives here, they are targeting and singled out.
That's right. Well, I think the idea of liberating another country is part of that imperial hubris that comes along with the tradition of American political grandeur in terms of international affairs. That we can remake the world and we can stamp everywhere around the world with American influence. That is, I think, a bit of a drunkenness with power. That doesn't mean that the United States should not stand up for things that involve human dignity and the dignity of men and women in any society. And this country, there's a history of that also in this country, of standing up for liberty and freedom and democratic politics and justice. But I think one of the most important elements in the evolution of American Muslims, and for this country to be ready for that evolution and support that evolution, is to exactly distinguish between the very small minority individuals in the Islamic communities here in the United States who carry the virus of violence and militancy and exclusion, and the vast majority of the Muslim people, there are millions, who are Americans and who go about their lives every day with normal attitude to life and respect for others and an embracement of their basic American principles.
Most of the violence of terrorism whatsoever is really, it's against the mosque, not from the mosque.
Exactly.
I mean, when I go to the mosque all my life, the only people I want to terrorize are the imams with their boring ceremonies. I mean, the mosque is a very hard place to plot anything, because people from different cultures.
I said a little while ago, the tragedy in the West is the ignorance about the Islamic depth of Islamic civilization. The tragedy in the Islamic world, I think, is also the inability so far, or the failure, to live up to the best of the Islamic civilization and its cardinal principles. And part of the reason of the underdevelopment of the Islamic world and the degree of powerlessness across the board is this ugly project of destroying each other and therefore violating the very principles. To be throwing bombs on mosques where people are in the midst of prayer in places like Pakistan is so ghoulish and so anti-Islamic that the Muslim people have to really begin to tell the truth about each other, I think, if we are going to salvage the best of the Islamic civilization.
Why one things happen in Pakistan, Afghanistan? We are here have to answer those questions. And when the Americans' military intervention that causes a lot of this violence that you're talking about, we don't make the connection.
I think we have to tell the truth about both. We have to tell the truth about our own background as Muslims. And to tell the truth doesn't mean we dump on each other. It means we are objective as much as humanly possible about our own record, all the way to the contemporary period, good and bad. And I think we will bring the same kind of a critical analysis also to the American tradition, the American history, the contemporary reality of the American society. We have earned the right to do both critiques as citizens of the United States and as also people who have come from another civilization, the Islamic civilization. We belong to both of them, you see, and we need therefore to act as citizens who are stakeholders in both of them.
When the Taliban destroyed this ancient Buddha's statue, the whole world was up to arms, including Muslim countries. What is about a place that becomes a dogma and becomes divine for a country that they don't really they shy away from deity or any divine issue, but a place becomes almost sacred.
Yeah, well, concrete symbolic items have a way of galvanizing people's attention for a particular period and maybe even become etched in the minds of people for a long period of time. The Buddhist structures that were destroyed by the Taliban, which I thought was just a violation of everything that is sacred and honorable about human culture, certainly ought to be seen that way. But at the same time, if there are mosques that are being destroyed, the same thing, I think, should be, the same kind of a reaction should be expected. I come back to the basic principle we started with, and that is, if one wants to understand the American society, it is extremely important to be very discerning in terms of differences. And for me, these three categories of American society, I think the majority of the American people who are sensible, who are reasonably educated, who are progressive, and they understand and they support the basic foundations of the American Constitution, including freedom of religion and tolerance with each other. The middle group, second category, that is rather ignorant, ill-informed, doesn't know, easily therefore subject to bamboozlement and therefore confusion. And then the hardcore, always part of the American society, seized in individuals and groups who hide behind a particular kind of a patriotism and therefore try to demonize all others.
Well, thank you so much. I hope, Fox, which the group that makes the loud and makes that small group much louder than it is.
This is still a very open society.
It is.
And having that debate and encouraging that debate without violence, I think, is the American way.
You're safe, I'm safe. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Conclude our show. Dr. Ahmed Samatar is the Dean of International Global Citizen McAllister, happy Ramadan. Ramadan Kareem. See you next week. Assalamu alaikum and God bless you all.
أرسم أمل